You get annoyed when cold medicine tastes bitter. In the Middle Ages, medicine could mean drinking snake blood, mercury, or even human urine, while you're lying comfortably in bed with clean water, hot showers, and Wi-Fi. Back in the 13th century, a tiny scratch could turn into a death sentence. And that thick porridge they ate every day? It was often cooked with something so bizarre, you wouldn't believe it until I tell you. Good evening. Tonight, we're not talking about gallant knights or fairy tale castles. We're diving into the real Middle Ages, a world of disease, hunger, and punishment so brutal they'll make your skin crawl. And here's the truth. If you were thrown into that world, you probably wouldn't last past breakfast. This story is made for you to unwind with before bed. A little chilling, a little fascinating. And I'd really love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Leave a comment and say hello. Your support means the world and keeps us going. Now, turn off the lights, pull up a blanket, and get ready. We're about to enter a world where life and death were separated by nothing more than a scratch. Chapter 1, The Hard Dawn of 1325. Part 1, Beds and Shelter. You wake up not because you're rested, but because your body has reached its limit. Ever wonder what it feels like to sleep on straw, crawling with fleas, under a roof that leaks cold wind straight onto your face? Welcome to the Middle Ages. No alarms, no mattress, no comfort, just your own aching back and the sound of chickens scratching beside your head. Something stirs you. Maybe it's the whistle of the wind slipping through cracked walls. Maybe it's the sharp itch of a flea crawling from the grass stuff bedding up your spine. Or maybe it's just your body reminding you, this is survival, not sleep. Above you, soot-black and wooden beams sag low enough to headbutt. Cobwebs tremble in the pale morning light. The thatched roof overhead might as well not be there. The wind still gets in, curling from your ankles to your neck like a wet snake. It's cloudy, maybe even a little brighter than yesterday. But here, light doesn't mean warmth. It only means you've made it through another night. You turn your head. The slightest turn makes your neck crack. On the left is a youngest brother, snoring, his feet propped up on a straw bag. On the right is your friend, hair tangled like straw, breathing raspingly through her broken teeth, the smell of joint pain ointment still lingering on her sleeve. No separate beds, no space. Everyone sleeps together, on a flat straw floor, piled on top of each other like a rough pile of firewood for winter. In the middle is a rough wool rug, a rug that serves only one purpose, to keep dirt off the wool. Underneath is a layer of old straw, a mattress that no one bothers to change unless the rain is too heavy, the smell is too strong, or there's a dead rat under the pillow. You smell it. The smell of last night, not fading but intensifying, is something you breathe every day, from the moment you open your eyes until you fall asleep in the cold and backache. This space, cramped, dark, full of people, animals, snoring, animals rubbing, the wind whistling to the walls, is your home. You had dreamed of a house with 2 rooms, with opaque leather windows and linen curtains, with a high bed in the corner and a goose-down pillow. But that dream was fading, like the last candle before dawn. All you had was a warm corner, warm enough for mice to like, close enough for the whole family to huddle together, and familiar enough that it no longer seemed as bad as it had been the first day. You stirred slightly. A sharp straw pricked your neck. You turned to your right, pulling the wool blanket up, thick, coarse, heavy, and smelling like wet sheep. The light did not come from the window, because you had no windows. It seeped through the cracks in the roof, the cracks in the walls, the tiny cracks that let the wind in. And even though it was only a tiny bit of morning light, you felt it like a sewing needle piercing your eyelids. The light told you, wake up. You struggled to sit up. Every joint sounds like a millstone that hasn't been oiled for a long time. Your back is stiff. Your hips hurt. Your knees feel like they're about to fall off. 22 years old. At this age, you've lived more than half your life. Part 2, Smell and Personal Hygiene. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the others. But as you move, it hits you harder, the air. Thick, damp, and heavy with smell that clings like old sorrow. Not one smell. A chorus of them. No. A tragedy in 3 acts, and you got front row seats. There's a sharp tang of wet ash. The sour mix of chicken droppings baked into the dirt floor. The musk of a goat dozing behind a thin wooden partition that barely hides anything. And then people. 6 unwashed bodies packed in tight. Their sweat soaked into wool blankets. Their breath stale in the cold. You catch a whiff of cracked heel oil. Of old will singe at the fire. Of skin that hasn't felt water in days. And beneath it all, the quiet, unmistakable rot of mold. You breathe through your mouth. But it doesn't help. In this house, the smell is part of you. You think about the word scented. That word doesn't exist here. No scented candles. No perfume. No mint. You have forgotten what it feels like to smell good. Smell is life. You hold your breath. Step out of the straw. Your feet touch the ground. Cool, damp. Something sticks to the soles of your feet. You don't look down. Experience has taught you that looking only makes things worse. Acceptance is the only way to live. You go to the small bucket near the stove. There is some water left in the bottom. Yesterday's rainwater, now covered with thin layer of scum and a few dead mosquitoes. You bend down and splash it on your face. It's cold. Washing your face isn't to clean it, but just to feel like the day has begun. You wipe your mouth with your hand. Inhale deeply. Your breath still smells of yesterday's stale porridge, but you don't frown. It's all too familiar. You don't brush your teeth. No one else does. If you can afford it, you chew fresh twigs. If you have vinegar, you rinse your mouth. Today, nothing. You don't feel disgusted with yourself. That's the scary thing. Part 3, Sanitation and the Streets. You pull the toilet bucket out from under the kitchen. The wooden bucket, slightly cracked on the side, has been used since last night. In it lies everything your family disposes of after dark. There's nowhere else. No toilet, no sewer. You carry it heavy-handed and head for the door. The cold wind hits your face like a slap. You pull your coat up around your neck and walk slowly to window, a deliberately cut opening in the wooden wall, slightly above head height. You follow the rules, take a deep breath, then shout, not out of anger, but because the politeness of the day demands it. Garde, you rush out into the street. The water splashes, thick and heavy, into the ditch below. It's the village ditch. It's not called a sewer because it has no pipes. It's an open gutter running to the houses where people dump their stuff. Human waste, excrement, blood washing water, rice water, bath water, blood from the slaughterhouse, refried oil, all of it comes together to form a black river. You remember the time a child in the village slipped and fell in. He was sick for 3 days, then died of fever. No one knows why, but everyone knows. You turn back. No one asks what the smell is. Everyone knows. You put down the bucket, rub your hand with a handful of dry straw, and scrape them with a sharp knife. There's no water to wash your hands. Nothing, except a reluctant admission that survival is more important than cleanliness. Part 4, Water and Danger. Your thirst returns. Your throat feels like dry bark. Every swallow scrapes against the ache in your jaw. That molar, once just yellowed, now a dead gray, like it's rotting from the inside out. You drag yourself to the rain barrel. It's covered by a warped wooden board, meant to keep out leaves and rats. You lift it, wincing at the creak, and tilt the barrel gently, hoping what's inside isn't crawling. The water pours into a small wooden bowl. Pale yellow, cloudy with thin film. A dead mosquito floats. You blow gently, scooping it out. You take a sip. Cold, metallic, acrid, but it is water. You take 2 more sips, then stop. You shouldn't drink too much. The barrel is only full on rainy days. Today, the sky is gray, but no rain. Your mother once told you that when she was a child, the whole village had diarrhea because of drinking water from the northern stream, where strangers had once thrown a pig carcass to drown their sins. You don't know if the sins would sink, but the pig decomposed, and the whole village fell ill. From then on, everyone was wary. Water had to be collected from the roof, flowing through wooden troughs, collecting in covered buckets. But it was only a temporary measure. The roof was made of thatch, chicken manure, and ash. No one could be sure that what they drank every morning didn't carry bacteria, but everyone drank it. Some people boiled it, but boiling consumed firewood. Firewood was more expensive than bread. Your family only lit a fire to cook porridge. Some families drank beer. The beer was thin, low in alcohol, but clean. But to brew beer, you needed barley, yeast, thyme, and a little luck to keep the batch from going bad. Your family had none of those things, except time, but poor people's time is never a resource. You think about that as you put down the wooden bowl. Your back still hurts. Your hands are cold, but you're breathing. And here, in 1325, breathing is an achievement. You look around the house, where the first light of morning filters through the cracks in the walls, across the face of your sleeping grandmother, over the chicken skeleton hanging in the corner, over the toilet bucket, which radiates the warmth of last night. The new day has arrived. No noise, no beginning, no good morning, just continuation. Part 5. The dangerous water and the parasites. Your thirst claws back. Your mouth feels lined with dust, every breath dragging grit across your tongue. Swallowing becomes a quiet battle. Your jaw throbs, the rotting mold in the back turning from yellow to a sickly gray, like it left too long in water. You lift the board covering the rain barrel, a warped piece of wood, rough at the edges from the sun and rain, and even from the rats. Your mother once said, "Cover it so the rats don't fall in, or you'll have to pull out before you drink." You don't know if she's joking or not, but you've seen it once. A baby rat, belly up, eyes wide open, and you've been more careful ever since. You tilt the barrel. The murky, pale yellow water pours into a small wooden bowl. There's a thin film and a dead mosquito floats. You blow gently, pushing it to the edge of the bowl. Your hands are shaking from the cold, but you still try to keep the water from spilling. You raise the bowl to your lips. The first sip is always the worst. Cold, metallic, a taste of mud or dried blood, a slight sourness like rice water left overnight. But you drink anyway, not because you're thirsty, because you have no better choice. You stop after the third sip. You shouldn't drink too much. The bucket is only full if it rained the day before. Today, gray, no rain. The cold holds the water in the clouds, but doesn't let it drop. The bucket is draining like your mother's life force every winter. You remember the story your mother used to tell you. When she was young, about 10, there was a dry summer that lasted almost 4 weeks. The bucket ran dry. People started drawing water from a stream in the north. At first, it was fine, but then every single person in the village started having diarrhea. Children vomited. Old people had high fevers. The whole village panicked. Later discovered, someone had thrown a dead pig into the stream to get rid of sins. Mother did not know who. No one dared to ask. Whoever asked too much would be considered a rebel against God's arrangement. You once passed that stream. Clear, cool. The rocks at the bottom sparkled. But you never drank. No one drank anymore. Seeing the clearness does not mean safety, especially in this place, where everything beautiful hides something more terrifying. You once tried to boil water, but firewood was too precious. A small bundle of firewood was a hot meal. No one wasted it on water, unless someone was sick. And if they were sick, sometimes clean water was too late. There was a child who died of fever. His mother once boiled basil leaves and gave it to him to drink. But when the boy stopped breathing, people still blamed the stream water. People said, the soul of the dead animal still swims in the water, dragging the living with it. It sounds absurd, but everyone believes it. Weak beer is a better choice, but you rarely have it. You have no malt, no copper pot, no yeast, and if you did, you wouldn't be able to wait a few days for it to ferment when your stomach has been growling since the day before. Once, you drank water from a rain puddle on a cabbage leaf. Small, clear, sparkling like crystal, tasted like well water. But the next morning, you had diarrhea. Not bad, but enough to make you not dare try it again. Your body gets used to unclean things. Your stomach is like steel. But it can't always beat the medieval army of microorganisms, as your father used to call it, half jokingly, before he died of dysentery. You've seen worms in your stool, white as noodles, wriggling, disgusting. Your mother said, "Don't look, it weakens your heart." But you look, to know they're inside you, and to know you survive even though they live with you. You exhale, steam clouds a wooden bowl. You set it down. Water, seemingly clear, pure, is the best killer in the village. You have learned to drink in sips, as if sipping a chance to live. Part 6. A new day, just a continuation. You put down the wooden bowl. Your back is still sore from last night. The pain is like an old friend, quiet, not loud, but always there. Your hands are cold. Your feet are numb. Your forehead is dry, but your hair is damp, because someone's breath has been around your head all night. You exhale, not in relief, but because you need to breathe to start. A space around you seems to have not yet awakened. Everything is still, not in a peaceful silence, but in the silence of a battlefield after a battle. The first light of the morning does not come in a rush. It seeps through the cracks in the walls, drifting like smoke. A pale yellow streak crawls across the beams, touches the earthen wall, and then trembles to rest on your grandmother's face, where her skin is wrinkled like wet bark. She still breathes, intermittently, but evenly. Each inhale is an affirmation. She is still there. You glance toward the corner of the house. A chicken skeleton hanging from a nail. 2 days ago, the meat is cooked into porridge. The bones are saved to simmer. Maybe they'll be used today. Maybe they won't. Depends on what they catch on the way to the fields. The family toilet bucket is still warm, because the dirt floor beneath it is steaming slightly. No one feels embarrassed or disgusted anymore. It's all just habit. You look up at the roof, where the light filters through the straw. No more rain. No more wind. Just cold, thick air, as if the night before the sky had held all the breath of the dead. Then you hear the bells. The church bells, distant but clear, not ringing, not echoing, but striking each note like a hammer on a chopping board. 1. Note 1. It doesn't wake you. You are already up, but it confirms one thing. A new day has begun. Without your permission, you didn't expect this day. You don't hate it. You just know it's coming. Like every day before. Like every day after. No morning greetings. No sleep well. No one to ask what you dreamed of last night. No coffee. No newspaper. No one to remind you what day it is. No one knows what day it is. Here, the new day doesn't come with light. It comes with duty. You don't wake up because you want to live fully. You wake up because there are chickens to let loose, water to draw, fields to work. You stand up. The first feeling is heaviness. The second feeling is pain. But you're used to it. You tug at your robe. The smell of smoke still lingers in the fabric. You slip on your goatskin shoes, so old the soles are soft as clay. You step outside, gently so as not to wake your mother. The morning wind is cold as the mouth of a well. You inhale, not deeply. Remember, never breathe deeply in the early morning. You look up at the sky. Ash. No rain. No sun. Like a piece of canvas stretched across a field. Why but promising nothing? You walk to the well. Pull the water. The wooden dipper makes a squelching sound. The water jerks from the rope. Your hand hurts. Your shoulder stings. But you don't stop. No one stops at this hour. You wash your face. Just a little. Cold as ice, but enough to wake you up. You brush your hair back. No mirror needed. Mirrors are for those who have time to look at themselves. You go back to the house. Everyone is getting up. Your mother rummages through the porridge pot. Your sister is putting her feet in the cloth bag. Your grandmother still hasn't opened her eyes, but you feel her hear your footsteps. No one says much. Everyone just continues. No instructions needed. No signals needed. Here, the new day doesn't begin. It just continues yesterday, like a string that has never been tied. You know today will be the same. Also tired. Also hungry. Also aching bones. Also nothing to remember. But you still walk out the door. Pick up your hoe. Go! Just as your father did. Just as your grandfather did. Just as your son would have gone had he lived to pick up a hoe. In 1325, a new day is not a miracle. It's just that you're not dead. It was horrible to think that from the moment I opened my eyes, I would be faced with filth coldness and no privacy. The idea of a good night's sleep or a comfortable morning was completely non-existent. Just waking up was an ordeal. Chapter 2. The Endless Battle with the Cold. Part 1. The Threat of Freezing Air. You thought cold was just the weather? Think again. In 1325, cold wasn't just air. It was a predator, slipping through roof cracks, slithering past the fold of your cloak, creeping up your spine and laughing in the dark. You grew used to it, but that didn't make it any less suffocating. In the early spring months, the cold was less sharp than in winter, but it was persistent and insidious. It didn't paralyze you immediately, but crept into every breath, slowly, patiently, as if it knew you would succumb to fatigue rather than pain. There was no snow this morning, but the cold was still clawing at you under your woolen coat. The air was damp, cold, and misty. Each breath you take is like a swarm of tiny steel spikes, slitting down your throat, sweeping across your chest, then blowing out the last bit of warmth in your bones. You don't cough. You've learned not to cough, because every time you cough, you feel like you've lost another piece of your lung. You don't open your mouth. Never breathe through your mouth. Not out of politeness, but out of survival. Opening your mouth in the early morning, when the air outside is still numb and cruel, is inviting death to quietly enter your body through every gust of wind. You once saw a strong man in the village, a tall blacksmith, fall ill after just one night of sleeping in the yard, drunk. The next morning, he coughed like a chisel on dry wood. By afternoon, he was flat on his back. The third day, no one dared enter his house. The smell of gangrene and pneumonia spread over the fence. The cold doesn't kill you like ice and snow. It kills you by making you think, just a sip of air will do, and then you cough up blood. You've seen it. You've learned. You've learned. Air, the thing all living things need to survive, can also be the dagger hidden in nature's first kiss of the morning. Part 2. Breathing for survival. You learn to breathe again from the pain itself. Not deep breathing. Not even breathing. Intelligent breathing. An instinctive breathing, but with purpose. A breathing you can only understand when every alveolus in your chest has experienced the cold of the night without fire. You breathe in slowly, shallowly, and most importantly, through your nose, not through your mouth. Never. No one taught you this in words. Your father didn't sit down to teach you. He simply coughed violently all winter when you were 8 and then died on a cold, rainy morning before he could blow out the oil lamp. And your mother, from that day on, gave you only one thing to say when it was cold. Don't open your mouth. You understand. Not because she hates you talking, but because she doesn't want another person in the family buried in the middle of winter. Over the years, you developed the skill. Breathe softly. Hold the breath right at the tip of your nose. Don't let it go down your throat. Let the warmth of your blood, of last night's breath, linger in your nostrils. Warm the air a little before pushing it down your throat. You hear yourself breathing every morning. A sound so small that sometimes you don't know if you're alive or dreaming. But it's the sound you keep better than a cough that comes up with blood after a bad breath. You've seen many people cough. The kind that's not because of sore throat, but because their lungs are cut by the cold wind. There was a child who lived near you. Every morning, his mother wrapped a scarf around his neck, leaving only his 2 nostrils exposed. But one morning, he woke up earlier than his mother, went out into the yard, took a breath through his mouth. He kept coughing. By noon, he couldn't breathe anymore. And that afternoon, his mother wrapped the scarf around her son for the last time. Not to keep him warm, but to keep the smell of death out. You don't forget that image. You taught your brother to breathe like you. You didn't use words. You just put your hand over his mouth every morning. When he opened his mouth to ask something, you shook your head. He understood. And now, when he wakes up in the cold, he breathes like you. That's how you love your family. You teach them how to breathe without dying. Part 3. The consequences of cold air inhalation. You've inhaled it wrong. Who hasn't? One February morning. The wind is stronger than usual. The sky is unusually blue. Strange. You step outside to clean the manure. In a moment of self-forgetfulness, you look up at the sky and take a deep breath. It's as if someone has stuffed a handful of cold nails into your lungs. The first sensation is sharp, piercing from the back of your throat to the middle of your back, then numbness, then a cough like someone has torn a tree root out of ground. You hunch over, coughing until you think you're going to throw up. Your eyes water. Your back arches like a bow. Your tongue is numb from the air you've swallowed like crushed ice. That evening, you develop a slight fever. Not much, just enough to make your mother gently place her hand on your forehead and say, But, if the fever doesn't go down in 3 days, someone will start gathering brown ashes to prepare to cover the body. You survive that time, but you can't forget the feeling. The feeling that the villagers still call when the soul flies out with a breath. An old man in the village once said, when you breathe cold air deep into your chest, the soul will freeze. It will start to separate from the blood. And if you cough too hard, it will go out, not to return. You don't believe it, but you believe what you saw. An old woman, a neighbor, coughed up blood just because she forgot to wrap herself in a scarf one morning when she woke up. A young girl, a childhood friend, got pneumonia after a night without a thick enough blanket. A 3-year-old child turned purple just because her mother overslept, leaving her bare-shouldered. The cold doesn't stab you like a sword. It slowly suffocates you. You learn to listen to the cough and know who will live and who won't. A dry cough, there's still time. Cough with phlegm, be careful. Wet cough, smell of blood. Start embroidering mourning scarves. You have embroidered many mourning scarves. You breathe lightly, short and shallow. And as you do, you silently thank your body for remembering how to survive. Part 4. Staying warm while you sleep. When the sun sets, the darkness doesn't come quickly, but the temperature plummets. You feel it from your fingertips, where the skin begins to crack, to your toes, where your nails crack like old ceramic. At this point, staying warm is no longer a pleasant thing. It's a struggle. You gather all the cloth in the house, every scrap you can find, and layer it. Thick woolen coats, scarves, old pot cleaning rags, even grain sacks. Anything that isn't wet and hasn't been chewed by mice will do. You don't need to look pretty. You need to live. You wrap your head in the last layer, a dark linen scarf, not to keep out the wind, to keep your breath in. You learned this trick from your grandmother, who survived a winter of snow. Wrap it up over your nose, not your mouth. She used to say, when you sleep, the spirit wanders. If it gets too cold, it doesn't come back. You know her folklore, but don't underestimate it. When you lie down, not on a bed, but on a layer of straw that has been beaten to avoid prickling, you always make sure your face is covered. The air you exhale condenses in the cloth, creating a small layer of warmth, fragile and short-lived, but just enough to keep you from coughing, from shivering to the point of waking up. In the morning, the towel is soaked with water, cold, but you accept it. It's better to be wet than frozen from the inside out. You pull your robe up over your legs. People say sleeping with your legs curled up keeps you warm, but you know that sleeping with your legs curled up will make it, so you can't stretch your back in the morning. So you force yourself to lie flat, enduring the cold on your pillow, but keeping your spine. The children in the house sleep that way too. Your younger brother, only 9 years old, already knows how to cover himself with a towel like you. He doesn't ask for his own blanket. He knows that here, the warmth doesn't come from the fabric, but from the people, from the way the whole family lies close together like a pack of hibernating foxes. In the middle of the house is the stove. The ashes have cooled since the afternoon, but the fire is still red underneath. You used to be the one to watch the fire, to keep the embers from going out. Now your sister does that. She watches the midnight shift, her hands shaking, her eyes half closed, but she still rummages through the embers, blows softly, and then falls asleep by the stove like a wet cat. The fire, it's more than just a light source. It's the heartbeat of the house. When the fire dies down, your house is quiet. When the embers crackle, everyone sleeps peacefully. Without the fire, you know, the cold will win. It will slowly, bit by bit, drain the warmth from your skin, from your blood, from your mind. And then you'll wake up in the middle of the night, terrified not by nightmares, but by not being able to feel your hands anymore. You don't want that feeling. You don't want anyone in the house to experience it. So you rummage through the ashes before bed. You turn the wood. You light the fire. You watch the fire. Not because you're good, but because you're alive. And to be alive is to keep the fire burning. The nights are longer in this era. Not because of the sun. Because of fear. You pull the towel up to your eyes. Curl up next to your brother. Listen to your grandmother's rasping breaths. The creaking of wood under someone's feet turning over. You close your eyes, praying that you'll wake up tomorrow, still breathing. No more, no less. Part 5, Embers, the last beat. The sight of waste being dumped on the streets is truly horrifying. And the poor dental hygiene, just thinking about the bad breath is horrifying. Makes me even more grateful for modern life with simple things like toothbrushes and enclosed toilets. Chapter 3, Interrupted Sleep and the Importance of Fire. Part 1. The difficulty of quality sleep. At night, you don't really sleep. You just close your eyes and try not to think. Sleep, in this age, is not like a lullaby or a warm blanket or a soft mattress. It is an unspoken bargain between a tired body and a world that is never really quiet. You lie in a space that is conveniently called home, a wooden room, no partitions, where everyone sleeps together on a straw floor with no bed, no mattress, no space. You don't get to choose your location. You sleep where there is room. Today it's next to your grandmother. Tomorrow it might be near the door, where the wind is strongest and the dog sometimes crawls in for warmth. You close your eyes, but you don't sleep. Your ears are still open, taking in everything. Your mother's sighs in her sleep, your brother kicking his feet against the mud wall, your grandmother's dry cough, the wind whistling through the cracks in the planks. Occasionally, there's a sound of my scurrying across the straw. Their squeaking, mixed with the scratching that creeps in from the dark corners, creates a damp, steady soundtrack, as if the whole house is breathing in a silent fever. You bend your leg. Your foot touches someone's back, your sister, perhaps. She whimpers softly, then turns over. There's not enough room in the house to avoid collisions. You've counted 8 people, plus a cat and sometimes a kid, sleeping under a roof less than 3 arms length across. No dividers, no doors. When one person turns over, the whole house knows. When one person talks in his sleep, the whole house wakes up. You remember the time your 8-year-old sister was sleepwalking, peeing in the middle of the house. Its nightmare is your reality. You don't blame it. You did the same thing when you were younger. Everything blends together. The smell of bodies, the sound of animals, the dampness of the earth, the crackling of the stove, like a thick fog that covers you, pressing down on your every breath. You fall asleep, not quite asleep, but into a gray area between waking and dreaming. In it, you can still hear the wind, still feel the cold at your fingertips, still know that if you open your eyes, everything will be the same, cramped, noisy, damp, and cold. Sleep, just a pause. A moment when you stop paying attention to the pain in your hip, the itch at the back of your neck, or the sound of someone's teeth grinding in your ear. You no longer demand a good sleep. You just want peace. Just hope that morning doesn't come too soon. Part 2, the shift system. You don't sleep through the night. No one in your family can. Not because of the lack of blankets, not because of the cold, but because of the fire. The fire needs someone to watch it. In the middle of the house, under the low thatched roof and rough mud walls, is the kitchen, not as tall as a modern kitchen, not built of bricks, just a sunken hole, lined with a few stones, covered with a thick layer of ash. There, every night, your family lights a fire. The first fire is lit with dry wood, bark, dry leaves mixed with straw. When it burns, it pops like popcorn, the only sound in the night that makes you feel safe. But the fire doesn't burn forever. It needs someone to keep it going. Your family takes turns. Not on paper. Not on a schedule. just an unspoken agreement. Word of mouth, responsibility, passed down from elder to younger. Your mother stays up for first shift, from the time the fire is lit until it's almost completely covered with ash. She goes to bed late, but she also gets up early. So the middle of the night, the hardest part, is usually for the young, for you or your sister. You wake up in the middle of the night. No one needs to wake you. Your body is used to it. Your eyes open just as the warmth in the house begins to fade, a sign that the fire is dying. You crawl out of the straw as quietly as a wildcat, so as not to wake the others. The wind whistles through the planks. Each step makes your feet feel like they are touching cold stone. You sit down by the stove, gently tap the ashes. There's still red under there. The fire is not dead, but it needs wood. You blow gently, not with your mouth, but through a small bamboo tube, so as not to burn your cheeks. The fire flares up, small, but bright enough for you to see your sister's face huddled against your mother's legs. Enough for you to see a small crack in the earthen wall, where the wind blows the strongest. You add more wood. Not much. Wood must be used sparingly. Just a couple of sticks. Enough to keep the coals from going out. You sit there, back hunched, arms hugging your knees, watching the fire lick up the bark. The light dances on your face. Warm, soft, temporary. That's when you think the most about your father, who used to keep this shift before you. He used to sing softly while tending the fire. You don't sing. You don't dare wake anyone. About the next crop. Will there be worms? Will there be enough rain? Will the tax collectors clean it all? About the shirt you're wearing. Patched 3 times. The 4th patch. Will the fabric tear at the seams? You're not afraid of the night. You're afraid of a night without a fire. One winter night when you were 13, the wood was gone. The whole family fell asleep and forgot. The fire went out. You woke up because you couldn't breathe. The cold wind stabbed your back like a knife. Your younger sister cried because her legs were numb. Your mother shivered as she lit the fire in the dark. That morning, your grandmother coughed and wouldn't stop. A week later, she died. You don't forget the smell of that morning. The cold air, the cold sweat on your skin, the lingering smell of smoke. You vowed never to let the fire die again. You watched the fire like the blood of your family. When the embers glowed red, you gently set the wood down, then returned to the haystack. The nap was short, but it was enough if the fire was alive. Part 3. The importance of embers. Embers are more than the remains of a fire. They are a living memory, a last whisper of warmth. They are the only thing that separates this house from a grave. You learn that on the longest nights, when the wind howled outside, when mice gnawed at something in the corner, and when your little brother was too cold to cry, a fire can flare up and then die. But coal stove, glowing, smoldering, can keep you warm through the night. You remember the time when termites ate most of your wood. There was nothing left for the family to start a big fire. All that was left was ashes, a few pieces of coal. Your mother knelt down, buried the pieces in straw and old rags, and blew on them carefully, as if breathing life into the lungs of a seriously ill child. And it flared up, a tiny light, crimson as old blood, enough to warm a hand, enough to make the water in the pot simmer. From then on, you understand, the embers are the soul of the night. No one is allowed to let it go out. If it goes out, not only will you have to rekindle it with a flint the next morning, it will take hours, but you will also face the risk of no one surviving the night. Every morning, your mother carefully pushes the ash aside, revealing the still smoldering red coals. She pokes them gently with a dry branch, checking for life. If the coals are still red, she smiles. If not, she is silent all morning. The whole family knows that day will be a bad one. You have seen neighbors who forget to keep their embers. They wake up earlier, colder, more irritable, and then the children cry more. The old people cough more. Everything is worse just because of the lack of that silent red light. The embers do not speak, but they keep everything intact. You put your hand on the brick near the stove. Warmth seeps through your skin. You close your eyes, imagining it as sunlight, but you know the sun is still far away. And at this moment, The embers are the only sun you have. It keeps the space alive. It keeps the person lying next to you. It keeps you alert and resilient. You once thought, if there was only one thing you could bring in the winter, you would not choose food, not clothes, not knives. You would choose a red coal, carefully kept in soft ash in a chipped pipe, so that when night falls, you can start again. You crawl out of the hay, as quietly as a wildcat, so as not to wake the others. The wool blanket slides off your shoulders, revealing your cold, purple back. The wind from the crack in the door whistles through, not hard, but sharp as a needle. Each step onto the hard floor makes your feet feel like they're touching a slab of frost. You clench your fists, not out of fear, but so that your hands don't freeze before they touch the embers. You sit down by the stove. The stove, a hollow in the middle of the house, lined with stones picked up from the stream and broken bricks from previous lives. On top is thick gray ash, cracked like snakeskin. You tap the ash lightly, as gently as if waking someone from a cold dream. Under the ash, the embers remain, a red spot, not bright, not flickering, just glowing slowly like an old heart. You exhale, then take the bamboo tube, the one your father carved when you were a child, and blow over the end a gentle puff, not stirring up the ash, just enough to wake up the fire. A red glow, a sliver of light awakens like eyes opening after a long night. You add firewood, just 2 small sticks the size of a finger, dry and brittle. Can't have more. Firewood is scarce. Firewood is the poor man's gold. But that's enough to keep life going. You sit there, back hunched, arms hugging your knees, watching the fire lick at the bark. The light dances on your cheeks, highlighting the soot from the fire the day before. In that moment, you feel like the center of this little universe. Not the strongest, but the only one still awake, guarding the only thing alive, the fire. You think of your father. He used to keep this watch, watching the fire every night when your mother was still nursing you. He would sit and sing softly, his voice low, steady, unclear. You used to wake up to his voice like the wind through the willows. Now he is gone, and that voice is only in your memory. You don't sing. You don't dare. Not because you're ashamed, but because you're afraid someone will wake up, afraid the fragile cycle of sleep will be broken. Sleep is money here. Whoever takes it away is guilty. You look at your sleeping sister, her head resting on your mother's leg. You see her shoulders shaking slightly with each breath. The blanket has slipped off her back. You stand up, pull it up, and return to the stove. The fire is still there, breathing, red, alive. You think about the coming season. Will there be worms? Will it rain regularly? Or will it be another crop failure? Will the tax collector leave enough seed? Or will you have to mix the rice you eat with the rice you sow? You think about the shirt you are wearing, patched 3 times. New fabric on top of old fabric. The seams are as tangled as spider webs. You don't know if the next time you patch it, it will still hold the shape of a shirt or just be a mass of fabric sewn into the shape of a person. You are not afraid of the night, but you are afraid of a night without a fire. You experienced that once, when you were 13. That winter was unusually long. The firewood was gone. There was nothing left to burn in the house except the newly planted mulberry tree. Your mother sat counting each stick, deciding to use the last part for cooking. That night, no one was watching the stove. You woke up in the middle of the night because you couldn't breathe. It wasn't a stuffy nose. It was a cold that seeped into every crevice of your chest. Your lungs contracted. Your eyes widened. Your sister was moaning. Your mother was hastily gathering the ashes, her hands shaking so much she couldn't hold the flint. The next morning, your grandmother was coughing so hard that blood came out. A week later, she didn't wake up again. You never forget the smell of that morning. Cold smoke, cold sweat, and ashes falling from the thatched roof to the ground. From that day on, you vow never to let the fire go out. You look at the embers, small, gentle, but persistent. You watch over them like you watch over the blood vessels of your family. As long as the fire is still there, you still believe that tomorrow could be no worse than today. The embers, not just a remnant. They are a living memory, the last breath of warmth, the only light between the house and death. You have experienced nights so cold that the dew forms on the roof like salt. The mice in the corner freeze. The water in the bucket turns to ice. But just a few red embers buried in the ash are enough to keep your little brother from freezing to death. Enough to keep the porridge from having to be rekindled the next morning. You remember every morning your mother lifting the ashes, poking them gently with a stick, looking for a red glow. If she sees one, she smiles. If not, she is silent all day. No one said anything, but everyone knew it would be a hard day. You thought about the houses that couldn't keep the fire going. They woke up earlier. They were colder. They got sicker. Children cried more. Old people coughed longer. And then no one had the strength to plow half an acre of land. You dreamed of being old, hair gray, hand shaking, but still sitting by the fire. Next to you was your grandchild, also learning to play the bamboo pipe. You didn't dream big, just wanted someone to keep the fire going after you. You poked some more wood. The fire crackled softly, the sound like a faint greeting from an old friend. You sat for a while, until your eyes closed. You knew you had to go back to the haystack. This sleep wouldn't last long, maybe only half an hour, but that would be enough. If the fire was still alive, you left the stove. The ashes rose again. The fire went down, but you knew the embers were still there, and the beating of the house, of your family, had not stopped. Part 4. Physical pain makes sleep difficult. Even when the fire is still red, the blanket is still warm, the house is still quiet, you still can't sleep because your body simply hurts. Not the kind of pain that says, oh, it hurts a little and that's it, but pain, as if every joint has been crushed and then reassembled with hemp rope. Pain from your toes to your knees. Pain from your lower back to your hips. Pain in your neck, where you used to carry sacks of rice with your bare head. Every time you lie down, it's a bargaining chip. Lying on your side hurts your shoulders. Lying on your back hurts your back. Lying on your stomach makes your chest so tight you can't breathe. You change positions at least 10 times before your eyes close. You're only 22, but your knees already creak like rusty plowshares. Your spine is bent like someone in their 50s. Your right arm has an old tear from a mortar wire. It's not completely healed. It's a dull ache. Every morning, when you wake up, the first thing you notice is numbness, then the cold. Finally, you have to endure. You know that if you stop working for a few days, it might help, but who will let you stop? There is no concept of vacation. There is no Sunday, unless it rains too hard to plow. And even then, you have to mend clothes, pound grain, fix the roof, collect firewood. Your body has no chance to recover. It is only 2 states, working and tired after working. So when night comes, even though your eyes are closed with fatigue, you still cannot relax completely. You turn over, you bump into someone's elbow, you lift your leg, you cram from an unexpected cramp, you breathe heavily, you hear your teeth grinding. Your mother used to say, to sleep, lie still, but you can't, not because your mind is restless, but because your body can't find a position that doesn't have a sore spot. Some days you lie close to the stove to be warmer, but your thighs were slightly burned by the splattered coals. Your skin was blistered. Your mother covered it with cold ash, but the blisters lasted for weeks, and you didn't dare lie on that side anymore. Sleep, then, was not a reward. It was a final test of a day of survival. It was a journey of dragging your ragged body across the fragile boundary between wakefulness and sleep. You used to dream, to lie on a feather mattress with a soft pillow, to take a hot bath before going to sleep. But in the morning, you still got up from the rotten straw, wiped your mouth with your sleeve, and continued, because you were a farmer. And in this era, being alive was a luxury. Being able to dream was a gift you had to trade for constant pain. You sighed, not out of despair, but because you were used to it. And in the middle of the night, when the wind had just died down, the sound of the stove still rustled, you closed your eyes, not to sleep, but to rest in the pain, just for a while before the sun rose. This diet sounds horrible, from the way the porridge is prepared to the hard bread and the beer instead of water. It's not only deprived, it's completely joyless. Surviving on such rations is pathetic. Chapter 4. Brutal Work and Degrading Health. Part 1. The Cruel Work Schedule. Each day starts with sound. Not birds chirping, not a soft breeze, but the heavy clang of a church bell. It doesn't wake you. It drags you out, like pulling a rotting log from thick mud. Slow, reluctant, relentless. No clock, no warm calls to breakfast. Just a ringing of iron, slicing to the thatched roof, bouncing off mud walls, piercing your ears. And with it, the ache, the slow, creaking ache that starts deep in your bones. You sit up, your body does not respond immediately. Your eyes sting, your lips are dry, your neck is stiff, and your back. You don't want to talk about your back. You don't think about what day it is. Here, the day doesn't matter. There are only two kinds of days, work days and Sundays. And Sundays, too, if there's a harvest, a sudden rain, or a neighbor needs help putting out a fire, become work days. The sun comes up and you have to go out. It's that simple. No one asks how you are. No one lets you take a day off because you have a cold. There's no hospital to ask for a leave of absence. If you don't go to the fields won't be plowed. If the fields aren't plowed, there's no rice. Without rice, the whole family will starve. You start the day by rekindling the fire, repairing the wall that collapsed in the rain, feeding the chickens, checking the goat pen, tying your shoes with leather straps. Then you go to the fields. You take your hoe. Your wrists are so calloused that you can't tell the difference between leather and wood. Your hands are cracked like cracked earth in a drought. With every step, mud sticks to the hem of your shirt. But you don't bother to brush it off. No one here dresses to look good. Dressing to avoid freezing is enough. You go to the fields. No one greets you. People start their work like machines, bent over, plowing, sowing, picking, pulling, threshing. There are days when the sun is scorching hot. You are thirsty, but the water you brought with you is gone by mid-morning. There are days when it rains, and the rain is not cool. The rain pours mud on your shoulders. The rain soaks the ground. The rain makes your back hurt more. You work from the moment the sun rises until it sinks behind the hills. There is no lunch break. Only a quick snack, a piece of black bread, a piece of onion, sitting right in the field, something to fill your stomach. Then continue. There is no bell to end the day. There is no office hour. There is only light and exhaustion. You come home when it is completely dark. Your clothes are soaked or stiff with sweat. Your hands are shaking. Your toes are swollen. But you still have to light the fire, cook porridge, clean the barn. You don't think of yourself as working hard. You just work to survive. It's that simple. You used to dream of a day off, a day without going to fields. Just sitting by the stove, listening to grandma tell stories, mending old clothes for your younger siblings. But dreams are a luxury. Even when you are sick, you still plow. When your mother stumbles, she still lights the fire. When your father dies, you only stop for a day, and then the next day you pick up the hoe. There is no choice, because poverty does not allow you to choose. Part 2. The brutal nature of work. Your work is not variety, not creative, with no opportunity for advancement. It is repetitive, day after day, season after season, passed down from father to son. You did not choose to farm. You were born into it, in the mud, in the smoke, in the hose and the panting of the whole village. You plow the land. There are no plows, no buffaloes, unless you are well off, which you are not. You use a hand plow, a blunt steel blade, and an oak handle. Each furrow is a battle between you and the soil that never wants to be touched. The soil is as hard as rock or as sticky as tar. If it is dry, you have to water it first. If it is wet, you have to stand in mud up to your knees. Each step is a withdrawal from the persistent pull of the earth, both loving and cruel. You do not just plow. You pull weeds with your bare hands. Weeds grow faster than rice. You have to bend for hours, strain your back, pull each bundle. Thorns prick your hands. Mud seeps into your skin. You don't complain. Who will listen? You dig ditches to drain water when it rains. Every meter dug is a meter of survival. Don't dig, flood. Plants die. Family starves. You thresh rice. No machine. Use a bamboo stick. Beat the grains to make them fly. Dust flies everywhere. Inhale and you cough. But don't thresh, don't eat. You build walls with clay and straw. Plaster them with your hands. Stamp them with your feet. Expose them to the sun. One rain, and they'll wash them away. Plaster them again. You saw wood, saw them by hand. No gears. Wood is as hard as iron. A plank takes all day. Your back is sore. Your hands are swollen like rice cakes. You dry rice, no cement yard. On a piece of cloth, in the sun. Strong winds blow it away. Cats and dogs step on it. If it's lost, it's gone forever. No one will pay for it. You carry bags of grain, bundles of straw, paving stones, fertilizer. Each time you carry them, your back gets another crease. If you don't carry them, you can't get the job done. You even kill chickens, ducks, rabbits, sometimes goats. No one else does it. You have to cut their throats, dip them in boiling water, pluck their feathers. The smell is strong. Your hands shake. But if you don't kill them, you get no meat. There is no other job. You can't go to school. Literacy is a luxury. Books are the property of the monastery. Even if you know how to read, what's the point? You don't know what being bored is, because if you don't work, you starve. You don't have a side job. You don't have time for personal development. You only have biceps, a hunchback, swollen knees, and a wooden hoe. There are no weekends, no tea parties, no bosses. There's only the earth, heavy as a curse, and you, like a worm digging forever and never reaching the bottom. Part 3. Health and physical exhaustion. You have no doctor, no pharmacy. No one comes to ask, how are you feeling today? Only you and your body, together trying not to collapse. Every day at work, you trade a part of your body for the life of your family. And every night, you have to sleep with what is left. Your hands are calloused. The cracks on your palms do not heal, only dry, then tear more. Your fingers are bent from holding a hoe for too long. Your back is hunched, not exactly a deformity, just tired and unable to stretch. Your left shoulder aches. Your right eye is blurred after a hot summer. Your ears ring from the sound of hammers, axes, wind. You do not rest, even though it hurts. You go to work with a scratch that is not yet healed, with a fresh burn, with a knee that is swollen from a sprain. No painkillers. No one does it for you. You used to think, maybe tomorrow will be better. But the next morning you wake up, it hurts more and you still do it. The next day, the old pain has not gone away. A new pain has appeared. And so, the pain becomes a silent companion. Your mother coughs all spring, not because of a cold, but because her lungs are worn out by the kitchen smoke. Your brother can no longer hear clearly in his left ear, since he fell into a manure pit and hit his head on a rock. No one thinks you are sick, because illness is a matter for the rich. The poor can only try a little harder. Occasionally, someone brings a package of leaves to the market, says it is medicine, boils it and drinks it, but you don't believe it. Once your sister drank the leaves, vomited blood. You believe in endurance, believe that getting enough sleep will help, but you never get enough sleep. Every night is an unfinished recovery. You have heard that a healthy person must eat enough, sleep enough, and rest. You eat porridge, sleep on straw, rest by drying firewood. You are not well, but you are not dead, and that, in this world, is a kind of wellness. You once saw a man collapse in the middle of the field. He did not fall. He did not cry. He just sat down and did not get up again. Someone carried him home. By evening, he was dead. People said, he must be weak. You do not know what your heart is like. But you know, every time you exert yourself, you hear a deep pounding in your chest, like the sound of gong hitting a well. And you are afraid. You do not tell anyone. No one can help you, because everyone is the same. You look around. Your neighbors all have hunched backs, crooked shoulders, red eyes, swollen knees. No one looks sick, but no one is really well. Here, health is not a state, it is a limit. As long as you can do it, you are well. And when they can't do it anymore, they dig you a small hole in the backyard. No need to call the doctor. No reason. Part 4, short life expectancy and imminent death. You don't know how long you'll live. No one can predict your future. No medical records, no birth chart. Just a vague feeling that if you survive the coming winter, you can call yourself lucky. You're 22 years old. In the village, you're an adult, a pillar, a main worker. But you also know if you die tomorrow, no one will be surprised. Here, 40 is a myth. 50 is a legend. Anyone who lives past 60 will be told a story as if they were living fossils. The oldest person you know is the old lady in the corner house, 47 years old. Her back is bent like a question mark. Her hair is white as ashes. One eye is blind. Every time she coughs, everyone falls silent, waiting to see if it's the last time. You've calculated. How many people have you seen off? Grandmother died of a cough in the night that no one heard. Uncle fell from a pear tree, broke his ribs, and could not be cured. Childhood friend ate poisonous mushrooms picked by the stream. The potter's daughter miscarried and got an infection. A child in the neighborhood died of a fever after a rainstorm. Death comes without a clear reason. It only needs a mistake, a cold, a deep splinter, an unwashed wound. It lurks in every corner, in the mist, under the mud, after a cough, in a bowl of water. You are not afraid of death because you see it every day. You just don't want to die in vain. You have thought, if I die from being gored by a pig, is it worth it? If I die from overwork, who will remember? If I die from eating moldy bread, then is it just because I am poor? You have no answer. You only know death here does not roar like thunder. It comes like a torn thread, silently, unexpectedly, and without mercy. Even if you are healthy, you can still die, just from an infected scratch, just from drinking water from a bucket with bugs, just from slipping your hand on an axe. You have had a dream that you fell asleep and never woke up. You don't know if it was a nightmare or a wish. Your mother once whispered while cooking a thin meal of porridge, "Don't try to live long. Just live for today, that's enough." You looked up at her. She didn't smile. She wasn't sad. Just plain honest. You understood that. You didn't expect to live long. Just to live until the end of the day. Still keeping 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 breath without interruption. Enough to go to work tomorrow. Enough for your younger sibling to eat. Here, living is a victory. To live after 30 is an honor. To live to 40 is a miracle. And you, 22 years old, with swollen hands, an aching back, and a long day ahead, just need a pain-free sleep. Just reading this is exhausting. Life revolves around hard manual labor from morning to night, with no real days off, no hope of improvement, especially the double burden on women. And the fact that children are forced to work from a young age is sad. Part 5, Arbitrary Justice and Hidden Danger. Sometimes you feel like a buffalo, not because you are strong, but because you plow without ever questioning why. You only know one truth. If you stop, even for a breath, you will be punished, not by a lash, but by hunger, by the silence of the landowner, by the priest's watchful eyes, by your mother's disappointed gaze. And the worst of it all, even when you work the soil well, when you do the right thing, when you push yourself to the edge, you can still be killed, not by a blade, but by being drained of everything, until you're nothing but skin, bone, and the hollow ache of survival. You have seen old buffaloes after the harvest, sold. It doesn't matter whether they did well or badly. When they are no longer useful, they are taken to the market. And, the same with humans. Are you angry? Yes. A kind of anger that simmers, doesn't explode, doesn't scream. It simmers quietly inside. But you don't have time to be angry. You have to mend your shoes. You have to pound rice. You have to carry water from the well. The water is cloudy, heavy, cold, and scum-filled. You have to take care of your feverish sibling. You have to fix the leaky roof. You have to live. And so you swallow your anger like swallowing a small stone. It hurts your stomach, but it's better than letting it fall out and break everything. Justice? Here, justice is a luxury. No, it's a joke. A story people tell each other while they warm their stomachs. You've seen a man have his hand chopped off for stealing a loaf of bread, but you've also seen a Lord soldier extort an old woman's money, and no one dares to say a word. You've heard of a girl tied up in the market, called a witch because she could cure swollen feet with leaves. No one asks, is there any evidence? Because the evidence here is the priest's word. Justice here is not based on facts. It is based on who is stronger, who is higher, who has the land, who has the sword. You, a farmer, you have nothing but muddy fingernails and tired feet. Every time you step out of your house, you don't know if you will come back, not because of the war, but because life here can turn around at any moment. One wrong word can make you lose your land. One wrong look can make you beaten in the market. One rabbit trapped in the wrong place can make you hanged on a stake. You have been a poacher. Who hasn't? One rabbit, one evening, an empty stomach, a rope made of straw and lard. You set the trap at the edge of the forest, the Lord's land. You know it's illegal, but your sister is feverish. Your mother is exhausted. There is no more porridge. You catch a rabbit, go home, butcher it, make soup. The next day, the guards come to the village. No arrests, just hang around, threaten. You tremble, not because of guilt, but because you know if you are caught, you will not be judged. No one will ask, why? Only punishment. Some have their ears cut off. Some are fined more than the harvest. Some are hung on stakes at the village gate, their bodies exposed to the sun like straw. People passing by pretend not to see. You learn to bow your head. No questions, no interrogation. Even food is a risk. A dry piece of bread, if too hard, breaks a tooth. An unripe turnip causes stomachache. A piece of wild game not cooked enough can give the whole family diarrhea. You have to weigh everything like an alchemist, but only with onions, rags, and cracked wooden bowls. You almost died from a piece of pork, slightly rotten, but your nose has gotten used to the smell. You think it's probably edible. 3 hours later, you vomit blood. Your mother cries. The priest says it's God's punishment. You say nothing. Just swear not to let your brother eat the leftovers anymore. You don't believe in justice. You only believe that dry wood burns evenly. Believe that thick ash holds coal. Believe that plowed fields in straight rows will get less scolding. Believe that if you keep quiet, if you bow your head, if you do enough, then you can get through today. But you also know that's just belief. Because even when you do the right thing, you can still be wrongly accused. Because the rich need the poor to step on. Because the priests need sin so that someone can wash away the sins. Because the society needs a class of people to blame, to throw stones at, to punish. And you are that class of people. You are not the devil. But you're evil if they need someone to burn. You're not a thief. But you're a thief if you trap a rabbit on the wrong side of the border. You're not a witch. But you're a witch if someone dies of disease and you just gave them boiled leaves to drink. You're just a person trying to survive, a person just trying to get through the day. And justice? You don't need it anymore. All you need is to go home safe at night, to breathe in the morning, to live long enough for your little brother to grow up and understand what it means to bow your head and still keep your conscience. Chapter 5, Social Threats and Resilient Heritage. Part 1, Direct Threats from the Environment and People. You never really feel safe. Not when you sleep, because sleep is a luxury you can't afford. Not when you work the fields, where a single wrong step could bring ruin. Not when you go to the market, where every trade feels like a gamble. Not when you pray, because even the gods turn a blind eye sometimes. And most of all, not when you look into the eyes of the villagers. Those eyes, they're silent, sharp like knives, sometimes filled with suspicion, sometimes with envy. Here, death isn't just a threat from cold, hunger, or disease. It's a living presence. It can come from the land, the weather, the very air you breathe. But most terrifying of all, it can come from the people around you. You survived 2 floods, a fire that claimed half the village, and 3 failed rice crops. But survival here is never just about nature. It's about holding on desperately, gripping to whatever you can, because the moment you let go, the world doesn't wait. It swallows you whole. Flood season, water up to your knees, overflowing latrines. Feces float up along with dead rats, dead fish, and even a newborn baby that someone threw in. No one investigates. Everyone quietly looks away. The fire started in someone's kitchen. The whole area burned down in just one afternoon. No firefighters. No pressurized water. Everyone could only throw buckets of water from the ditch onto the roof, hoping that their house would not catch fire. 12 houses burned down. 3 people died. No one paid for it. The rice harvest season, that's when you eat rice porridge mixed with bitter radish. Some families eat tree bark. Some eat dog meat. Some families, like yours, split their meals in half and drink more water to feel full. You survived, but not intact. And then there are the people. You used to think your neighbors were your friends, but just a dispute over the edge of the land. They are ready to take an axe and chase you away in the middle of the market, not because they hate you, but because they are hungry too. Every meter of land is a part of life. You were once stoned by a child in the village just because you looked like a witch. You heard the blind woman tell about the time she was stripped in the market because someone said she had the eyes of the devil. No one helped her. Everyone looked. Everyone was afraid they would be next. You saw a man beaten to death just because he was suspected of stealing chickens. No evidence. No trial. Just a police station. And then 10 people beat him. 5 kicked him, and the other 10 stood and watched. No one protected you. No police. No lawyers. There was a village council, but they didn't help the poor. There were guards, but they protected the landlord. You had only yourself and the people in your house. You learned to bow your head when you passed a group of strange men. You learned to hide a small knife in your sleeve. You learned not to look too long at the woman who had lost 3 children to fever, because everyone said she was cursed. Even when you want to get water, you carried a stick, because someone might steal your bucket of water just because they think your water is cleaner than theirs. You don't hate them. You understand them, because you too, if necessary, would do the same thing to survive. Part 2. The unjust social system. You were born a peasant. That is not a fact. It is a sentence. A sentence that does not need a trial. It does not need a signature. It is engraved in your blood, in the calluses on your feet, in the sweater that never gets new, in the smell of ash that follows you for the rest of your life. Here, society is levels. At the top is the king. You have never met him. Below the king are the nobles. You have seen them, riding to the village, their cloaks fluttering, their noses high, their eyes staring straight ahead, as if there were no one kneeling by the roadside. Below the nobles are the lords, the landowners. They decide which fields you can plow, how much grain you can harvest, and whether you can get firewood from the forest. Below them are the priests, the literate, the ones who read the Bible, and who hold your soul. If they say you are sinful, you cannot argue. If they call you good people, you just bow your head in gratitude, even though you have done nothing. And underneath it all, you, the doer, the taxpayer, the one who takes the beating, the one who has no voice. If you're born poor, you will almost certainly die poor. There is no try will make you successful. There is no learning to change your life. Schools are luxuries. Books are monastic property. And time? You don't have time, you have to plow. Sometimes you wonder, what would you have been like if you had been born a noble? But then you shake your head. That question, here, is dangerous. To dare to dream of rising above your class is to dare to challenge God. You know a young man who once dared to say, "If I had a sword like the guards, I would never be hungry." A week later, he was arrested for inciting against the public order. Who denounced? No one knows. Who saved? No one dares. You learn one thing. This social order is not protected by reason. It exists by fear. You are afraid of hunger, so you work. You are afraid of being kicked out of your fields, so you pay your dues. You are afraid of being beaten, so you do not argue. You are afraid of being called a disgruntled person, so you do not dream. Sometimes you feel like a buffalo. You do not know why you have to plow. You only know that if you do not plow, you will be beaten. And even if you do plow well, you will still be killed after the harvest. Are you angry? Yes, but you do not have time to be angry. You have to mend your shoes, mix manure, draw water from the well. You have to live. Part 3. The role and influence of the church. You can't read, but you know God. You don't understand Latin, but you understand that if you don't go to church every Sunday, you might be called a lost cause. The church, where you were baptized as an infant, where you heard the priest preach, though you didn't understand much of the words, where your mother prayed for 2 winters because your little brother had a fever, where you were told that if you lived a good life, you would go to heaven when you died. You believe, because believing is the only thing that makes death less scary. Every Sunday morning, you wash your face, put on your cleanest, that is, least muddy, clothes, and walk the 3 miles to the stone church in the center of your parish. You kneel, you listen, you sing along to the choruses you don't understand. The priest stands on a high platform in his white robe, looking over your head, as if you weren't really there. He reads, he talks about sin, he talks about patience. He reminds you of hell, a place of eternal fire, pain, and regret. You don't want to go there, so you give your harvest to the church. A tenth. Even if you're hungry, you have to keep it. No one dares to keep it. Anyone who does will be excommunicated. That means they can't go to heaven. That means they're dead. One year, your family had a bad harvest. You still had to give your rice to the priest. Your mother cried as she wrapped the last rice in a cloth bag. Your father bowed his head. He didn't say anything. You once wondered, does God really need rice? But you didn't dare ask out loud. Thinking like that is a sin. You once witnessed a woman being called a witch just because she knew how to cure coughs with roots. The priest said it was magic. People stoned her. No one saved her. You don't hate the church. You fear them, like an invisible king who has power over both soul and body. Yet, there are nights when you pray, not for miracles, but for peace of mind. You pray that your brother will sleep well, that the fields won't be raked up by wild boars, that the fire in the kitchen won't go out, that your back won't hurt. You don't pray for heaven. You just pray that tomorrow will be a little better. Part 4. Resilience and Legacy. You do not write history. No books record you. No stone statues bear your name. No libraries record your words. But you leave something behind. Something quiet, small, but constant. Resilience. You do not create victories, but you feed the victors. You do not win independence, but you keep the pastures green so that the next season will have someone to till them. You are not known, but you are the soil, the foundation of an era. You survive the cold, through hunger, through the plague, through the plunder, through the contempt, the neglect, the silence of history. And you still get up every morning, make a fire, clean the barn, sow seeds, gather wood, mend clothes, teach children. You live without anyone recognizing your greatness. You just need your loved ones to still have a full meal. You watch your younger brother grow up, holding a hoe like you used to. Watch your mother grow old, her hair turning gray, but still sitting spinning. Watch your grandmother sigh, her hands threading the rosary beads until they are worn smooth. You don't stop to daydream, but sometimes while resting, rubbing the calluses on your knees, you think, if someone remembers me in the future, what will they think of you? A farmer, a person with a tired back, callous hands, a hoarse voice, cracked feet, or a person who has lived, in the true sense. Even though the world never wanted you to live, you don't have an answer. You only know you didn't give up. You didn't become a wild animal. You didn't become cruel. You lived and left behind the most important thing: how to survive while still keeping people's hearts. And maybe, just maybe, that anonymous farmer in 1325, are the silent root of an entire civilization. The influence of the medieval church was truly immense and terrifying. Every aspect of life was controlled by religion and the fear of sin and hell. It is hard to imagine a life where even thinking could be considered a sin. Yet the fact that people found laughter, song, and love in such circumstances is remarkable. It shows a resilience and ability to find meaning even in the worst of adversity. Chapter 6. Resilient as Ashes and the Silent Legacy. Part 1. Finding Light in the Darkness. No one expects you to be great. No one writes your name in the history books. No one etches it in stone. No priest ever speaks it aloud during service. Even when you die, if there are tears, they'll be quiet. Tears soaked into the soil, swallowed by the weight of unfinished work and the cold porridge waiting on the stove. But strangely, you still smile. Not often, not easily, but you smile. When your younger sibling mimics your grandmother's voice, her voice cracking like an old kettle. When someone else's dog sneaks into the chicken coop and chaos erupts. When your mother, bent over her mending, pricks her finger and curses like a battle-hardened soldier. In these small moments, life still flickers. It's fragile, fleeting, but it's still there. And somehow, that makes it worth holding on to. You smile not because life is beautiful, but because if you don't smile, you will cry. And tears, in this cold, only make your eyes sting and your heart feel heavier. You don't have time to think about belief in the future. But there are nights when you look at the embers in the stove and you feel you are not completely alone. You have heard your grandmother tell stories about a time when people believed that each star in the sky was a soul illuminating the darkness for the living. You do not know if that is true, but you have looked up on a cold January night and seen the stars shining like fire, and you whispered, "If Father is watching, I am still alive." You sing, not loudly, but yes, you sing when you cut grass, when you scrape bamboo shoots, when you hold a stick to stir the coals. The songs have no rhyme, no music, but carry the rhythm of sweat and breathing. The story you tell through your songs is not for anyone to hear, just for you to remember you are still alive, still have something worth keeping. You have loved a girl in the neighboring village, red cheeks, quick hands, a voice like the sound of running water. You met her twice when you were plowing the fields along the same border. Once gave an onion, once looked silently. No promise, no letter. But when she was married off, you sat silently by the stove all night. No one asked, mother didn't say. But the next morning, your portion of porridge was bigger. You used to dream, not a palace or riches, just a private house. Enough for you, your wife, and your child to sit and eat together without pushing against your grandmother, without fear of waking your younger sibling, without letting the mice take your share. You used to think, if there was enough rice, you would build another wall, just one wall, so that each person would have a corner. But that season was lost. The wall was never built. The dream also remained in the ashes. But you didn't give up on your dream. You still close your eyes every night and let the thought of tomorrow come to you like a gentle wind. No knocking on the door, no noise, but present. You told stories for your younger sibling. On nights when I can't sleep, you tell me about the cat that was lost for 3 days and came back with a broken leg and a stump of a tail, but still caught mice. You tell me about the day you almost fell down a well, but the torn rope still held you back, only because of a knot your mother tied that you once thought was useless. You tell me to believe everything has a reason, even suffering. You live without needing anyone to acknowledge your greatness. You don't need statues. You don't need records. You just need someone, maybe your younger sibling or your future child, to remember that someone once kept the fire burning to the night, sitting alone in the ashes and not letting it go out. The light here doesn't come from an oil lamp or a candle. It comes from within you, strong, small, but never completely extinguished. Part 2, the legacy of sweat and tears. You have heard someone say, the previous generation has pushed humanity forward. You do not understand clearly what forward means, but you know, without those who came before, there would be no roof you're living in, no road you're walking on, or even the bowl of porridge you're eating. You do not know how to write poetry, do not write books, do not have education, but your hands, with their calluses, cracks, burns, are proof of that you are building something bigger than you. Every time you mix manure, pick up gravel in the field, carry a bag of rice, you know, not just for today's food, but to keep the field fertile for the next crop, to keep the patch of your shirt from unraveling when your younger brother plows the field, to keep the wall of your house from collapsing in the rainy night. You do all of that, even though no one thanks you. No one looks. No one records it. Every drop of your sweat that falls to ground does not evaporate. It seeps into the fields, into the paths, into the backs of your little brother's shirts. It becomes a foundation of something lasting. You were not born to be a name in a book. You were born to plow, to light a fire, to carry water, small repetitive tasks, but they keep the world from collapsing. You used to be jealous. For those who lived in stone houses, had candles at night, had books to read, but you learned that the real light does not come from the candle. It comes from the fire you keep every night, so that others do not freeze to death. You used to sigh when you saw people from outside the village passing by. Their shoes were not muddy, their shoulders were not hunched, their skin was not tanned. But you also saw they did not know how to tie the shoulder strap, did not know how to chase the chickens back to the coop, did not know how to pick up live coals from the cold ashes. You knew. You lived by skills no one taught you, but you learned. You learned from your mother how to make a fire without smoke, so as not to suffocate her. You learned from your father how to use onion skins to cover a burn. You learned from your grandmother how to count the seasons not by the calendar, but by the smell of the wind, the thickness of the mist, the hoot of an owl near or far. You learned how to live by blood, sweat, and tears. And through that, you passed on something no one could take away, a living legacy. Not a house or land or money, but how to endure, how to work quietly, how to keep a fire going, tell stories, sew clothes, pick people up when they fall, and never give up. You didn't teach that with words. You taught it with actions. Your younger brother saw you plowing at dawn, saw you wading through the fields with feverish feet, saw you smiling, even though your toothache kept you awake. And he understood. He didn't need anyone to say, you have to live like this. He just needed to see you live like this. It is your legacy, not carved in stone. It is carved in the way your little brother walks, in the way he pulls the hoe, in the way he pulls a blanket over his mother when she falls asleep by the stove, in the way he stands still when he is wrongly accused, not crying, not complaining, just quietly carrying on. You are planting seeds that may not be seen right away, but one day they will come to fruition. Maybe in your children's lifetime, maybe in another generation, where people no longer die of cold, no longer shiver with hunger, where children do not have to sew their school shoes, where people live past 40 and still have teeth to smile. You will not see it, but you are the reason it can happen. Part 3. Every day alive is a victory. You don't think of yourself as strong. You don't wear armor. You don't have a sword. You don't fight to survive. But every morning you open your eyes in the cold with stiff hands, a sore back, and your mother's caught behind you, and you still get up, still step out of the haystack, still light the fire. And in this place where everything can kill you, that's strength. You're not as strong as a soldier, not as fast as a hunter, not as skillful as a priest, but you know how to plow with a torn knee. You know how to work with swollen feet. You know how to live with all the things people usually use as reasons to give up. You don't think live long. You think live another day. You used to count your age on your fingers. Your fingers point to 22. But in the village, there are people your age who have to use a cane. There are people who have lost teeth, lost ears, lost the ability to remember their wives' names. You know, If you make it past 30, you're a rare person. Living to 40 is a miracle. You heard that your grandfather lived to 42. His funeral was the biggest in the village, not because he was rich, but because he lived long. Living long is an achievement here. You have no medicine, no doctor. No one tells you to exercise, eat moderately, get enough sleep. You eat when you have it, sleep when you're exhausted, and work all the time. You once had a fever for 3 days, didn't eat, still went to work. You once had diarrhea for a week, still cooked porridge for your younger sibling. You once got burned, still burned straw to start a fire. Not because you were brave, but because you had no choice. You survived by stubbornness, by bandaging with leaves, rubbing oil with ashes, treating pain with regular breathing, and waiting. Every time you overcome an illness, you don't celebrate. You just quietly get up early the next morning, continue as if nothing happened. Because here, living is a duty, not a gift. You once saw your brother, only 10 years old, coughing until his face was red, but still drawing water from the well. You wanted to help, but he said, "Let me sleep." And you said nothing more. You understood he was learning how to live like an adult, in a place where there is no childhood. Every time you walked out to the field, hoe in hand, eyes still stinging, you knew you had won, not against anyone, but against the ever-lurking death. Death here doesn't scream. It just comes gently like the wind. You once saw your neighbor sitting down to rest by the roadside, then not getting up again. You once saw an old woman herding chickens, falling down and not waking up. You once saw a child taking a nap and not breathing anymore. You didn't see blood, no pain, just see they stop and no one wakes them up. So every day you open your eyes, see the ashes in the stove still warm, hear your mother reminding you not to forget your shirt, taste the onion in your porridge, is a gift, not a gift from God, but a reward for perseverance. You live, not brilliantly. You live, not great, but you live. And here, that is enough to call it victory. Part 4. Continuing the bloodline and the burden. You watch your little brother grow up a little each day. He no longer needs you to tie his shirt. He no longer needs you to pull the blanket every night. He no longer calls you brother when he's scared, but he still wakes up earlier than you. He holds a hoe like you used to hold it. His back slightly bent, his shoulders drawn back, the gait of someone who knows what hard soil is. You see him plowing, each furrow deep and even. He doesn't sweat much, but his gaze is exactly like yours at 15. Quiet, gritting his teeth to endure, but never turning away from the work. You see yourself in him, not his face, but the way he walks when he's hungry, the way he saves the last onion for his mother, the way he doesn't stop when his feet are blistered. You watch your mother growing older by the hair. Her hair is graying unevenly, white as winter clouds. Her back is shorter than last year. Her eyes are no longer sharp, but her hands were still fast, still moving the needle through the fabric like embroidering in ashes. Every time you tried to say, "Let me do it," she shook her head, gently, not sharply, like someone who had gotten used to living a useful life. Even if she was no longer strong, she still spun yarn, flax, hemp. Every time she twisted the yarn, she would mumble something, not exactly a prayer, not even a song, just a whisper, like the rustling of ashes when you stir the fire. You knew she was counting the days, not counting to die, but counting to know how long she had left to pass on to you one more secret. How make a fire when the wind was too strong? How make a shirt without needing new thread? You looked at your grandmother, the one who had kept you from the cold when you had a fever. She was now breathing, short, weak, but steady. Every time she threaded her rosary, you saw her fingers tremble, but still moving steadily. The rosary, once colored, now smooth, so smooth that the light that shines on it does not reflect, but sinks as if absorbed by years of prayer. She no longer tells stories, not because she forgot, but because she doesn't need to. You and I know them all. Every story, every name, every death and every birth, she no longer has to tell, because now you tell it to your sister. your sister will tell it to someone else. And so the blood continues. No medals, no flags. Only the hoe is passed on. The stove is kept red. The scarf is mended. The straw bed is made for the last time for the one who has just passed away. You understand you will not live forever. There will come a time when you will no longer be able to hold the hoe, no longer be able to light the stove, no longer be able to see the sun rise behind the trees. But if your brother still walks as you did, still looks at the ground as you did, then you are not gone. If he still lights the stove from the embers you left behind, if he tells the story you told on a windy night, if he gets up every morning, not because someone forced him, but because he understands, he must live, then you are still there. You are not great, but you are the link. You do not change the world, but you keep the world from falling into oblivion. You do not leave behind statues, but you leave behind your footsteps. In the fields, on the dirt paths, on the roofs with red stoves, on the straw beds where people once dreamed a painless sleep. And thanks to you, even though no one remembers your name, the world still turns. Chapter 7. Shadows and Flickering Faith. Part 1. The Whispers of Earth and Forest. The sun had completely sunk behind the western hills, leaving a mottled, blood-red streak across the gloomy sky. You straightened up, tried to suppress a weary sigh as you pulled the heavy hoe blade from the last patch of earth. The damp, brown soil clung to the metal as if wanting to hold on, as if reluctant to return the meager strength it had drained from you throughout the long, grueling day. The late autumn wind began to blow harder, sweeping through the bare stubble, carrying a chill that seeped into every patched layer of your clothing, penetrating Diarito to the marrow of your bones. The wind no longer whistled merrily as it did on summer afternoons. Now, it shrieked in fits, dry and eerie, like whispers from some other world you never wished to know. You glanced at the other peasants. They too were slowly gathering their tools, their backs bent, their gaunt, weary faces unable to hide their resignation. No one spoke a word to another. The silence was almost absolute, broken only by the wind and the rustling scrape of heavy footsteps on the dirt path leading back to the village. This silence was more terrifying than any cry, for it held an ingrained exhaustion, a despair that had become a part of their very breath. Earth. You bent down and picked up a small handful of soil, feeling its damp coldness and its distinctive, earthy scent in your calloused palm. Since the day you were born, you have been bound to the earth, just like your father and his father before him, like countless generations past. The earth gave you yams and rice grains to survive the days, but the earth also demanded your sweat, your tears, even your blood. People said the earth had a soul, that Mother Earth governed it, deciding whether the harvest would be bountiful or famine would strike. Whenever it was time to sow seeds, your mother would still sneak out to the fields at the crack of dawn, a handful of rice seeds in her hand, her lips murmuring some prayer you could never quite hear. She said one had to be sincere for Mother Earth to show compassion, to allow the seeds to sprout, the plants to flourish. You didn't know if Mother Earth truly heard your mother's prayers, but you saw the fear in her eyes whenever natural disaster struck, or when pests ravaged the crops. The fear of offending some unseen power always haunted the peasants who toiled year-round, their faces to the earth, their backs to the sky. Sometimes, you wonder if those silent rituals held any meaning. Did refraining from digging on inauspicious days truly help avert calamity, or was it just a way for people to reassure themselves in the face of life's precariousness? You remembered once, a neighboring family, driven by dire need, had recklessly tilled a small patch of land near an ancient grave on the exact day of the full moon. That season, if their family wasn't plagued by illness, they were beset by misfortune. The villagers whispered it was Mother Earth's punishment, that the spirits of the dead were angered. No one could be sure, but the fear simply grew, passed down from one generation to the next, becoming an unwritten law more stringent than the whips of the Lord soldiers. The path back to the village grew darker with each step. On either side, the forest began to appear like black, impenetrable walls, mysterious and full of menace. The forest provided firewood, edible wild plants that staved off hunger, and sometimes, if you were bold and lucky enough to set a trap without being caught by the Lord's foresters, a small animal for a meal. But the forest was also home to countless ghost stories, rumors of malevolent spirits, of restless souls of those who had died unfortunate deaths. It was said that if you went deep into the forest on moonless nights, you would hear children crying, voices calling your name. And if you were faint-hearted enough to answer, you would be hidden by spirits, doomed to wander in circles, never finding your way out, until you collapsed from exhaustion and died. You shivered, trying to walk faster. Even the sparse woods near the village, where you often went with the other village children to gather wild berries, now seemed alien in the fading light. The gaunt trees stretched their stark, dry branches toward the sky like ghoulish arms, the dark thickets seeming to conceal something. You didn't dare look directly at them for too long, just kept your head down, your pace quickening. The fear was not specific, but it crept in, gnawing at you. The village was just ahead. A few faint lights flickered from the cracks in the walls of the dilapidated thatched huts. The smell of wood smoke mingled with the scent of dampness and animal dung, creating a thick, heavy air, familiar to the point of heartache. But tonight, you felt something was different. Perhaps it was the wind, or perhaps it was the thoughts of the earth and the forest swirling in your head. You recalled your grandmother's words. She used to say that every strange sound in the night, every unusual dream, every animal behaving oddly, was an omen. An owl hooting shrilly in broad daylight foretold an impending death. A dog howling long, mournful cries under the moon was a sign of pestilence. A mouse scurrying across the rickety ancestral altar was enough to make the whole family anxious for days. Then there were comets, appearing with fiery tails streaking across the night sky. People said they were harbingers of war, chaos, and prolonged famine. You had seen a comet once, only once, when you were little. Not long after, a great plague swept through the village, claiming countless lives. Was it just a coincidence? You didn't know. But the old folks in the village, like your grandmother, they believed in these things with an iron conviction. They were the interpreters of omens, though their interpretations often only brought more fear and unease to a community already laden with so much suffering. When some omen appeared, the news spread faster than fire. People would gather in small groups, whispering, discussing, their faces etched with apprehension. The priests in the church would preach about the sins of humankind, about the wrath of God. But deep down, the peasants still believed in more immediate, more tangible forces present in the very land they tilled, in the forest they depended upon. You stepped into your own dilapidated hut. Your mother was sitting by the hearth, coughing dryly. Your youngest sibling was huddled in a corner, eyes half closed. The faint smell of thin porridge and the herbal concoction your mother had brewed from some roots for your sibling hung in the air. The flickering firelight danced on the smoke-stained earthen walls, on the decaying wooden beams that seemed on the verge of collapse. Here, in this cramped and gloomy space, the vague fears in the world outside seemed to grow even more potent. The cold of the night and the chill of ancient beliefs, of nameless anxieties, they merged, enveloping you. Only that flickering flame, the fire your mother and her mother before her had painstakingly kept alive through so many winters, was the sole anchor, weak yet tenacious, against a vast darkness and the mysteries that human reason could not fathom. You sat down by the hearth, stretching your numb hands towards the warmth. Tonight, like so many other nights, would be a long one. Part 2, when the body speaks in bitter remedies. The precarious balance of your family's existence, already so heavily weighted by hardship, tilted further into shadow one cold morning. It began with your youngest sibling, a small, usually resilient child, who woke with a whimper instead of their customary sleepy grumbles. Their skin, when your mother rushed to their side, burned with a terrifying heat. A dry, racking cough soon followed, each spasm shaking their frail body, and their small face, normally smudged with dirt and traces of play, was now pale and etched with a pain that twisted your insides. Helplessness, cold and sharp, pierced through the morning chill, settling heavily in the small hut. Your mother's eyes, already etched with the weariness of a lifetime, clouded over a familiar dread. In this world, illness was not merely a matter of a body failing. It was a pronouncement, a sign. For most, it was seen as a heavy hand of God, a just punishment for sins known or unknown, a divine test of faith. Whispers would begin in the village, speculating on what transgression might have brought such suffering. Had someone in the family failed in their prayers? Was there a hidden sin, a forgotten slight against the Almighty? Your mother immediately began to pray with a fervent, desperate intensity, her voice a low murmur beseeching mercy from a silent heaven. But other, older beliefs also stirred in the shadows of the mind. If the illness was sudden, or the child's cries seemed unnatural, people would speak of darker things. Perhaps an evil spirit, wandering the desolate paths, had cast its malevolent gaze upon the child. Perhaps a restless ghost, disturbed from its slumber, sought to inflict its misery on the living. The forest, always a source of both sustenance and fear, became a repository for these anxieties. Had the child wandered too close to a cursed tree? Had someone unknowingly brought something unholy back from its depths? These thoughts, unspoken yet palpable, added another layer of fear to the already grim reality. While the priest might later be called if things worsened, the first line of defense was always the age-old knowledge passed down through generations, a tapestry woven from observation, superstition, and sheer necessity. Your mother, her face a mask of grim determination, immediately set about her tasks. The search for remedies began, a desperate scramble against time and the limitations of your world. You were sent to gather specific herbs, plants whose whispered properties were the only medicine you knew. You knew the patch where the broad-leaved plantain grew. Its leaves said to draw out fevers if crushed and applied as a poultice. You searched for the feathery fronds of yarrow, believed to staunch bleeding and ward off ill humors. Ginger root, if any could be spared from the meager winter stores, would be greater to brew a warming tea, hoping to chase the chill from the child's bones. The preparation was as crude as the ingredients were humble. Leaves were bruised between stones. Roots were boiled in the same soot-stained pot used for your daily gruel, their bitter scents mingling with the ever-present smell of wood smoke and damp earth. Your mother would force sips of acrid infusions between the child's cracked lips, her hands gentle but firm, her eyes pleading with the inert plants to work their magic. If these common remedies failed, desperation bred more extreme measures. You had heard tales and sometimes witnessed the use of far stranger concoctions. Soot scraped from the chimney, mixed with pig lard to make a dark salve. Cobwebs, carefully collected, applied to wounds with the belief they would stop bleeding, though often they just introduced more dirt. Sometimes a village healer, usually an old woman whose knowledge was a blend of herbalism and half-forgotten pagan rituals, would be summoned. These women, like old Alara who lived at the edge of the village, were figures of both respect and suspicion. If their remedies worked, they were hailed as wise. If the patient worsened, or if their method seemed too unorthodox, whispers of witchcraft could easily follow. Old Alara, when she finally came at your mother's tearful behest, was a stooped figure, her face a road map of wrinkles, her eyes sharp and unsettling. She examined your sibling, her gnarled fingers surprisingly gentle as they probed the child's hot forehead and swollen glands. She muttered incantations you couldn't understand, her gaze fixed on something beyond the confines of your hut. Her remedies were even more arcane, a small pouch filled with dried herbs and what looked like animal teeth to be hung around the child's neck to ward off evil spirits. A vile-smelling brew made from ingredients she collected herself from the deepest parts of the woods, which she insisted the child drink. The cost was a precious handful of dried beans, a significant portion of your family's dwindling food supply. The care for the sick was a constant, exhausting vigil in conditions that seemed designed to invite death rather than deter it. There was no soft bed, only the same rough straw pallet, perhaps with an extra tattered blanket, if one could be found. The child lay in the cold, damp air of the hut, the wind whistling to the countless cracks in the wattle-in daub walls. Your mother rarely left their side. She would wipe the feverish brow with a rag dipped in cool water, a small, almost futile gesture against the raging internal fire. She would try to coax a few spoonfuls of thin oat porridge into the child, but mostly it was refused. You would take turns sitting with your sibling, listening to their shallow, raspy breaths, a sound that became the soundtrack to your waking hours and haunted your sleep. Love and helplessness were a constant, bitter brew in your heart. You saw the raw anguish in your mother's face, the way her shoulders slumped a little more each day. You felt your own gnawing fear, the dread of what seemed inevitable. The cramped space of the hut offered no escape, and the risk of the sickness spreading to others was a constant, unspoken terror. Every call from another family member, every shiver, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through you. Days blurred into a haze of fear, exhaustion, and the pungent smells of herbal remedies. Sometimes a flicker of hope would ignite, a slight easing of the fever, a moment when the child seemed more alert. But then the coughing fits would return, more violent than before, or the fever would spike again, dashing those fragile hopes against the hard reality of your powerlessness. Whether this particular battle would be won or lost remained to be seen. But regardless of the outcome, the experience would carve itself deeply into the fabric of your family's memory, a stark reminder of life's fragility in a world where true healing was a distant dream. The whispers of the earth, the fear of unseen forces, and the acrid taste of bitter remedies were the grim companions of illness. And faith, however strained, was often the only comfort left when the body itself began to surrender. Part 3. Village Festivals and Hidden Divides. The grinding rhythm of your life, a relentless cycle of toil and scarcity, was punctuated, on the rarest of occasions, by a village festival. This year, it was the feast day of St. Michael, the patron saint of your small, wind-battered church. For a day or two, the relentless demands of the fields were grudgingly loosened, and a faint, fragile sense of anticipation, almost alien in its unfamiliarity, rippled through the village. The air, though still carrying the usual sense of wood smoke, damp earth, and livestock, seemed to hold a lighter note, a whisper of something other than backbreaking labor and gnawing hunger. Preparations, such as they were, began with a collective, weary effort. The narrow, muddy paths between the huts were swept with twig brooms, a largely symbolic gesture against the ever-encroaching grime. You, along with your family, attempted to bring a semblance of order to your own dwelling, beating the dust from the straw bedding, and perhaps scrubbing the single wooden bowl with a handful of sand from the riverbank. Garments, threadbare and patched countless times, were carefully inspected. You would choose your least ragged tunic, the one with slightly fewer holes, hoping it would pass as festive. For most, this was the extent of their finery. The thought of food was, as always, paramount. While no one expected a feast, the festival offered the slimmest chance of something beyond the usual watery gruel or coarse bread. Families pooled what little they had. Your mother had managed to hide away a small handful of dried apples and a precious lump of pig fat, rendered from a scrawny animal slaughtered months ago. She planned to make small, dense cakes, fried in the fat, a rare and almost unimaginable luxury. Others might contribute a few scrawny chickens, a basket of late-season vegetables, or a small keg of weak, home-brewed ale. These offerings, meager as they were, would be brought to the church, a portion for priest, the rest to be shared, however thinly, amongst the community. The festival day itself dawned with a pale, watery sun. The first and most solemn part was the Mass at the church. The small stone building, usually cold and empty save for a few devout women, was crowded. You stood crammed amongst the other villagers, the smell of unwashed bodies, damp wool, and faint incense mingling in the air. Father Thomas, the village priest, gaunt and stern in his faded vestments, intoned the Latin rites. His voice, amplified by the stone walls, seemed to boom with the authority of God himself. You, like many others, understood little of the ancient words, but the ritual, the flickering candlelight on the crude altar, and the shared act of kneeling and rising instilled a sense of awe, a momentary connection to something vast and unknowable beyond your harsh daily existence. It was a reminder of divine order, even if that order seemed to inflict more suffering than solace. After the Mass, the atmosphere lightened considerably. The small square outside the church, usually deserted, became a hub of activity. Some of the younger men, fueled by a little of the shared ale, engaged in rough-and-tumble wrestling matches, their grunts and shouts echoing through the air. A group of children, their earlier solemnity forgotten, shrieked with laughter as they chased each other in a game of tag, their bare feet kicking up dust. Someone produced a crudely made drum and a reedy pipe, and soon a ragged circle formed for a clumsy, energetic dance. The tunes were simple, repetitive, the steps unrefined, but for a brief while, faces usually etched with worry creased into smiles, and laughter, a sound too seldom heard, bubbled up. If the festival coincided with market day, as it sometimes did, the village would swell with visitors from neighboring hamlets, bringing with them goods to trade. A few tools, some pottery, perhaps a bolt of rough cloth. The air would be thick with the cries of vendors, the braying of donkeys, and the murmur of bargaining. It was a chance to see new faces, hear news from beyond your own small world, and perhaps, if you were incredibly fortunate, trade a small surplus for something you desperately needed. Yet, beneath this thin veneer of communal celebration, the familiar cracks and tensions of village life remained, perhaps even sharpened by the unusual proximity and the influence of ale. The distinctions of status were as clear as ever. The bailiff, representing the absent lord, and the few slightly more prosperous yeoman farmers occupied the choicest spots near whatever meager fare was offered, their portions larger, their demeanor more assured. You and the other landless peasants remained on the periphery, your hunger only partially assuaged, your thirst quenched with the dregs. Envy, that constant companion of poverty, flickered in sidelong glances. A woman whose child wore a slightly less patched tunic, a man who managed to laugh a little too loudly, a family that seemed to have contributed a slightly larger share to the communal pot. All became subjects of whispered commentary. Old grudges, too, had a way of surfacing. A disputed boundary line between two meager strips of land, an unpaid debt of few grains, a remembered insult for months or even years past. These simmering resentments, often lubricated by ale, could easily flare into loud arguments and sometimes clumsy scuffles that others would quickly try to quell. The festival was also a prime stage of the village's informal system of social control. Gossip, tongues loosened by the rare break from toil and the shared drink, wagged freely. Who was seen talking too long with whom? Whose piety in church seemed a little too demonstrative or conspicuously absent? Any deviation from the accepted norm, any perceived slight or moral failing, was dissected, judged, and cataloged in the collective memory of the village. It was a way the community policed itself, reinforcing its unwritten rules. But it could also be a cruel and unforgiving force, especially for those already on the margins. Too soon, the watery sun began to dip towards the horizon, signaling the end of the fleeting respite. The music faded, the laughter died down, and the visiting traders packed their wares. A weariness, different from the exhaustion of labor but no less profound, settled over the village. The brief illusion of plenty and carefree joy dissolved, and the stark realities of your existence began to reassert themselves. As you walked back to your hut, the temporary warmth of the shared food and drink already fading, the usual anxieties started to creep back in. The work in the field would resume at dawn, the ever-present threat of hunger would return, and the fragile bonds of community, stretched and sometimes frayed by the day's interactions, would settle back into their familiar patterns. The festival, with its fleeting joys and exposed tensions, was over. What remained was a quiet, heavy knowledge that life would go on, much as it always had, in the long shadow of hardship, punctuated only by these rare, imperfect moments of collective breath-holding. Okay, I further condensed part 4. This version aims to be approximately 100 words shorter than the previous one, bringing it to around 370 words. Chapter 7, Shadows and Flickering Faith. Part 4, The Enduring Hunger, the Lingering Shadow. The harvest festival's brief joy was a distant memory as lean months bit hard. Poor rains and blight ruined the meager wheat harvest. Stored food vanished. Hunger, a familiar specter, became a gnawing presence, a defining curse among life's many shadows. Prolonged hunger's cruel signs were clear. Your mother's sunken face, your own weakened limbs making simple tasks monumental. Children grew listless, small bodies shrinking. Work was agony, draining energy your meager diet couldn't replace. Meals were an illusion, thin porridge stretched with foraged wild plants, risky additions offering little sustenance, sometimes more pain. The psychological toll matched the physical. Patience vanished, tempers frayed. Desperation eroded community bonds, leading to whispers of petty theft from all-consuming need. Meal times were tense. Survival became a relentless hunt for scraps. Combing woods and fields, fishing barren rivers, risking snares for small game, hunger outweighing fear of punishment. Competition was fierce. While some shared, many retreated, focused on their own family survival. At times, bitter thoughts of the Lord's lavish feasts, of wasted food, surfaced, an ember of injustice. Slowly, the peak of hunger might receive an early crop or a grudging ration. The gnawing lessened, but the bitter memory remained a constant shadow. As this season of want eased its grip, a dull resignation, a deep weariness settled in. The world's shadows, unseen spirits, chilling illness, deceptive festival lights, and relentless hunger were constant companions. Yet, amidst these shadows, something flickered, a stubborn, defiant spark. Not grand hope, but the raw, primal will to endure. You saw it in your mother's careful rationing, your father mending a tool for a tomorrow he faced regardless. It was a quiet resolve to plant, tend the fire, and face each day. This flickering faith, not in gods or lords, but in your own tenacity and family bonds, stood against the encroaching darkness. Hunger, sickness, and fear would return. But for now, you had survived. In that refusal to be extinguished lay life's only offered victory. This chapter of suffering closed, but the story, etched in hardship and resilience, was far from over. The shadows remained, but so, too, did the small, stubborn flame of life, flickering, yet refusing to die.